Efficiency Unlocked is hosted by two tech-savvy physicians and dear friends of mine, Drs. Adam Karu and Dale Gold, who are experts in using technology to automate routine tasks and increase efficiency in everyday and business life. Let's see what they have for us today.
Stay tuned for this series of episodes where we'll be discussing the game-changing impact of AI in the realm of patient care and physician well-being.
Get ready to unlock efficiency with NerdMDs.
Efficiency Unlocked.
So we're seeing, great use by case management, nursing, physicians, and they're all using it because it's kind of summarizing what's happening with the patient every 2 to 15 minutes. You get a quick check of what's happening. It's clinically accurate, and you don't have to do that work. We had a case manager at Houston Methodist that said it saved them 2 hours of chart review in the morning. So 120 minutes given back.
That was the physician founder and CEO of Pieces Technology explaining the power of their product. On this episode, we're going to talk to Ruben about his entrepreneurial background, blending medicine, computer science, and the quest for the perfect note. We'll also delve into the various offerings of Pieces, including working summaries for inpatient care, progress notes, and the upcoming discharge summary feature. He even hints at their ambient approach that was just recently announced. We hope you enjoy this discussion on the future of healthcare, the potential of ambient and large language model AIs, and how technologies like Pieces are set to alleviate the administrative burden and restore joy in healthcare practice for nurses, clinicians, and physicians. Welcome to this episode of Efficiency Unlocked, Nerd Tested, MD Approved, and I'm super happy to have an entrepreneurial physician with us today, Ruben. You just heard his intro, and I really want to welcome you to the show today, Ruben. I know we talked in the past, but it's great to connect again.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah, you're super welcome. So, I got a little bit of a bio on you, and there was something on there that I wanted to touch on before you jump in. And, it sounds like for you, entrepreneurship has been kind of a part of your life from early on. Even, I think it sounded like you and your brother maybe started something way back in the day, well before you became a physician and a real deal entrepreneur. So do you want to share that real quick, and then we'll...
Yeah. So my brother and I in like late middle school and beginning of high school, we started a company that we called Amara Brothers, which isn't very creative when you think about it, but it was fun. And we ended up kind of doing data. So it was just a mix max of different things that we were interested in. So we did database programming for local companies, and we also built a little animation studio using basic programming, and basically our uncles hired us to create animations for their companies. But I found at that time that I really enjoyed both building things, but also interacting with customers, like the actual process of talking to them, trying to understand what's going on. Can we do something interesting? So so it started way back. It was a really fun experience.
That's awesome. I love hearing those early stories. Well, and then obviously you had, a career as a physician leader, and eventually, you started this new venture, Pieces. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that journey and your kind of story about creating that and why you did, and a little bit about what you guys are doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been an incredible journey. And even though looking back, I had interest in these different areas that now has sort of come to fruition in Pieces, I didn't necessarily see it coming together the way it did. But the interest that I have, obviously very interested in the deep lifelong interest, generational interest in medicine, with growing up with a lot of family members that were in medicine and a reverence for it. And still very grateful to be a physician and continue to study medicine. Interested in computer science, and then I'm also very interested in writing. You studied English literature in college, in addition to neurosciences. And so when I came to medical school, one of the interesting things that is less well known is that I really kind of came to love the concept of the progress note. The SOAP note, I think, is sort of an essential distillation of, it's like a beautiful, if it's done well, it's like a really beautiful piece of writing. It's like making a really good cup of coffee. If you're a connoisseur, you what's the blend of the various components? And so, that was an interesting element. And of course, after I finished medical school, I started to work on data systems and bring the passion of sort of like data analysis for improving care delivery starting at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas, where I did my kind of residency training. And that experience led me to a postdoctoral fellowship at Johns Hopkins, where focused on biomedical informatics. And the specific idea was, could you understand what could happen to a patient before it happens, which is kind of the essence of predictive modeling. And so when I was recruited back to the University of Texas Southwestern as a professor of medicine, working on biomedical informatics, teaching medical students, working, taking care of patients. And I started to realize that this was a great opportunity to kind of build software to try to predict what might happen to a patient. And in the course of that, we also said, is it possible to, write a summary of a patient? And the reason why I was thinking about that a lot is, one, that is the kind of essence of good medical writing, right? The perfect summary, which is like the assessment section of a SOAP note, is incredibly valuable, right? In the ambulatory setting, in the inpatient setting. But when I first started this, that was beyond the reach of the technology. There was a lot of natural language processing and rules-based approaches, but it was hard to get the kind of the form and coherence correct. But predictive modeling, being able to predict what might happen to a patient, really legged into that and started programs at the hospital to predict who might be at risk for going to ICU, who may be able to who might be readmitted to the hospital. And those were really helpful. And we started to see impacts from doing those predictive models. Now, predictive modeling is widespread. There's a lot of different approaches. But we did notice another problem with the predictive modeling, which is, a lot of physicians and nurses and others says, please don't give me another predictive model. Like, what am I going to do with this? This person's high risk. Yes, I know about that. What do I actually do? And also the sheer number, it's very numeric, it's very statistics based, and people don't have time for that necessarily to wade through all that. And it reintroduced the concept of, can we communicate this risk in plain language? And that was around 2017 or 2018. And we said, I think we're at the point with these transformer-based neural networks that were just emerging after the Google paper. And we started jumping into that, and we started working on, can we build the perfect summary that combines these risk models? And that started for us in 2018. And now fast forward 5 years later, and we've just crossed the line of deploying 2.4 million clinical summaries in among our clients. So amazing. That's kind of the journey of it. Yeah.
Yeah. When did actually the company Pieces kind of genesis?
Yeah. So the company started in 2016. We had actually developed a nonprofit research institute at the medical center here in Dallas. And it became clear as the software was developing, we're not going to be able to continue this in a nonprofit environment with research funding. There's a lot of important work to be done on the evaluation side, which we would continue to do. But the board of my institute, as well as the larger health system, said, what about, this has been really valuable here. Why not get private financing and create Pieces to deploy this to other health systems? So it started in 2016. And for the first couple of years, we were kind of finding our way. There was a lot of work around predictive modeling, integrating into the electronic health record, and then starting to bring in the generative AI.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I remember my first experience with Pieces, was pretty early on in, I'd say the chat GPT wave, as far as consumers go. And I remember seeing the demo that you guys did in the hospital, one of the hospital systems in Texas. And I just remember being at that moment, like, I was obviously overwhelmed by just all that technology, but to think that you guys were already looking at these transformer models, multiple years ahead of before that, it's just it was you guys were kind of that great place, great time, like to be able to leverage that. And I remember being awestruck by it at first, and not at first, I still am, and it's an amazing use. So I think let's dive in a little bit deeper into kind of what Pieces is doing today, because I think consumers and obviously healthcare workers are super interested in this, because I was noticing, I think from that first demo I just alluded to a little over a year ago, that there's definitely, it looks like there's been some additions to what you guys offer too. So can you tell us a little bit about that kind of potpourri of offerings, and then maybe a little bit about like how you think this really, or where you've really seen the impact of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one difference, and I want to say, Adam, thank you for this long form podcast to be able to talk about this with some depth, because I think there's a lot of different approaches out there, a lot of different companies I think you've alluded to in the other podcasts. We're a little bit different in that our roots kind of first really came out of the inpatient side. A lot of the generative AI companies, there's some amazing ones out there, very big admirers of the work that's going on. It's super exciting everywhere. But a big focus has been on ambient listening, primarily in the ambulatory side, where you can take your phone, you can take your microphone in to the patient room, listen to the whole conversation, have it turned into a note. I mean, amazing, right? But on the inpatient side, it's a little, there's different set of, challenges and goals. And so the first goal we had was, you have all these patients on your service. They're very complicated and very acutely ill. They may be in the hospital for 5, 6, 10, 15. We have a hospital that obviously has patients, for a year, right? We've all seen that. And trying to summarize that entire record, which could be 5,000 or 6,000 pages of data in Epic or electronic, into 150 words, is less. It's definitely not an ambient AI task. It's a comprehension task.
Yeah.
Like, can you understand everything that's happening? Because let's say there were 16 active conditions, which ones do we talk about? So the first goal, the first major offering that is kind of our most popular offering among all of our clients, is this concept of the Pieces working summary, which is it reads through everything. Pieces reads through everything that's happening to a patient. It looking at the physiology, the progress notes, the consulting notes, radiology, and then says in less than 150 words what's actually happening to this patient, and it's modeled after the assessment section of a SOAP note. The impact, the reason why that's extremely helpful is people are able to use it for their handoffs. So instead of having to write a handoff, they have a pre-drafted version. Usually, we encourage not to be the final version. Make your edits and things like that. It's now replaced for many of our health systems that are using it, the SBAR, that the situation background assessment recommendation that nurses do, a shift change. We have a health system, children's health system in Texas, where they went live on a Friday, and Adam, we're really excited about this. By the following Wednesday, we had 89% adoption by nurses.
Wow.
And without a single in-service. So basically, they were able to. There was a PDF sent by the administration, and we were like, there shouldn't there be an in-service, but they sent a PDF, and it was like kind of organic. People would say, "Oh, it's easy. You just go into this Epic dialog box, you drop down and pull in the summary, and then you have it in your patient list." So we're seeing great use by case management, nursing, physicians, and they're all using it because it's kind of summarizing what's happening with the patient every 2 to 15 minutes. You get a quick check of what's happening. It's clinically accurate, and you don't have to do that work. We had a case manager at Houston Methodist that said it saved them 2 hours of chart review in the morning. So 120 minutes given back.
Incredible.
And so I think that's the working summary. We're very excited about that. We've now deployed it for every age group from 1 day old to greater than 100 years of age, for every specialty, neurosurgery, cardiothoracic surgery. It's written in the style of the whoever the attending is. If the attending is a neurosurgeon, it has a neurosurgery style. If it's labor and delivery, So I think that's sort of customizable, very custom, agent-driven kind of summaries. So that's the core, like best element. Then we have our predictive models that are embedded in that. So within that summary, this person appears to be at risk for needing to go to the ICU, or this person may have a high risk of readmission for these reasons. And by incorporating the predictive model within the context of a summary, we're getting a lot of users saying, hey, that's a lot more helpful. I understand what I might do with that. And we can bring in from the institution, if you see this, then mention the summary. This might be a recommended pathway. Those are elements that bring it all into this, right into your patient list. So you see your patients, you can see the summary, you can see the risk. And that's been really helpful. So that's the working summary. We now have, we're deploying this quarter the full progress note. So a full SOAP note. This is obviously...
I saw that on your website, and I was like, ooh, I got to talk about this too.
So very excited about this. We had to double and triple check this pretty extensively because it's the risk for hallucination, which is sometimes what these systems can do, inventing information that doesn't exist. Obviously you can't do that in a healthcare setting. So we're now at the point where Pieces will generate the progress note with a focus on the assessment plan section. The subjective, you kind of have to, the SOAP note for those on the call, there's a subjective section, which is what's happening with the patient when you saw them. Objective, which is what is the objective data on the patient. And then the assessment plan, which is really where the meat of this, both on the inpatient ambulatory side. And for Pieces to generate a note, you have to have written one good note on the inpatient side. So it will not generate a note if you haven't written one good note. So it'll look for that note, either a history and physical or progress note. And then it'll look at everything that's happened since that note and edit that note. And it'll indicate right in Epic, these are the additional, do you want to modify this or not?
Yeah.
And so that's saving you potentially 10 to 15 minutes per, those inpatient notes can be very complicated.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, that's great. Obviously inpatient notes has a lot of, I think, copy forward, of workflows, and then kind of that modification. But this sounds like the more intelligent version of that, right?
That's kind of a good way of phrasing it. We're kind of seeing it as a very, intelligent approach. And we're also noticing it reduces errors that are propagated in the inpatient side. So, for example, when you copy forward, there's a lot of little things that you might miss, like this person's dobutamine was stopped, right? But you may not, it may be continued that dobutamine is still on, right? So I think it's looking for all those changes, as well as the new elements, like this MRI finding just showed this. And then the last, which we haven't developed yet, but the last part of that suite of products is the discharge summary, which is what everyone really wants. So you have a 25-day hospitalization, you have your discharge summary, and it's all pre-written. And now you just have to kind of look at it and edit it. And in all of those cases, we're after that perfect, can we get that perfect summary, that perfect note, the perfect discharge summary over and over. And so that's kind of the suite of products. Now, I'm excited to let you know, Adam, that in Q3, we're going to be bringing this on the ambulatory side. And same idea. So imagine if you have a patient that you've been seeing for 2 years, Pieces would go back and summarize as you're going into the previous, like right in your list of patients, what's happening with this patient. They were just in the ED. This was what happened when they got discharged, and really kind of giving that orientation. So we're pretty excited about that.
That's very cool too. No, and I love, I guess reflecting on what you just said, you said a lot of things that are amazing, but I think what's really cool is I think most of these most of these companies that are using this technology to either summarize or to ambiently kind of create things, are initially going only after physicians, which makes a bit of sense because that's the revenue generation for the majority of these facilities. But I think it's amazing that you're just applying the same technology to nursing, which is, equally as burdened by the documentation they have to do and these like assessments and flow sheets and everything. So that I think that's great that you guys are taking that approach. And then I think about the ambulatory piece, which I know we've talked about before too, is, our specialists they do so much like chart review, because our specialists are, getting a referral for a reason where the patient's probably already been worked up some, the primary care physician has done some of it and maybe even some kind of virtual kind of consultation and help in getting things. But if you can cut down that pre-charting, that, the ambulatory physicians and other clinicians are doing, that's going to be a huge win as well.
That's awesome, Adam. That's exactly, and we're working with 2 health systems around that, which is they said the new patients coming in, it's not like they're just brand new. They have a whole history.
Yeah.
That history will be in PDFs. It'll be in all these things. So the goal would be that pieces that would be brought into the EHR as a packet, and pieces would review all that prior history as well as the new stuff and then try to do that. So I think for specialists, could be really valuable. I know like at Kaiser, for example, a lot of people would probably be coming from elsewhere sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then for primary care, I think that's really large, because what if they primarily had specialists before, and how do you kind of organize all that? So I'm pretty excited about that.
Totally. No, that's great. That's super cool. I guess everything you said so far, I feel like you've kind of laid the groundwork of where you feel you guys differentiate from others. I think there are some others that are doing, maybe a similar or kind of an adjacent approach to what Pieces is doing. But I guess I'll ask 2 questions. Where do you see you guys like being significantly differentiating, and how do you see yourself continuing to stay ahead? Because I think there's a lot of conversation about, these EHR companies are eventually going to start incorporating some of this. So yeah, what's your take on how you can kind of keep that delta, and value?
It's definitely, it's constant innovation, no question about that. But so there's a couple of things that I think we do that are really unique and give us a nice gap. I think the first is we will provide an actual hallucination guarantee. We will say that all of our summaries, our progress notes, our discharge summaries will be below a certain error rate. And if our error rate exceeds that, we will actually drop our fee until it's fixed. And no one else has really done it. So the question you probably are like, okay, or at least we don't know of anyone that's willing to stay on the line. So our error rate in our contracts, we have a certain error rate that we say we negotiate. And again, these are like for all of the AI companies doing this, these are drafts, right? And you do want people to kind of look at it and do a final edit. But even on the draft, we're saying we're going to have less than X percent, error rate. In our current working summary, our error rate is 1 severe hallucination per 100,000 summaries at the moment from a statistical. And so we're going to say, okay, we know we can hit these numbers. The way that we do it requires humans. And so if you don't, and we can have a big discussion about, I think humans are going to be involved for a long time, in my personal view, just from what we see. But we have the way our system works that's unique is it generates the output, and then we built a separate AI, an adversarial AI, whose only job in the world is to find problems with the output that came in. It's like the pesky little brother that's like, no, that doesn't make sense at all. Like, so it's looking at the output and it's trying to find an error. If there's some error, so you mentioned like the output said this person's here with acute myocardial infarction and we're treating for skin disease. There's no discussion about any therapy or treatment for the myocardial infarction. This seems to be inconsistent or incoherent, right? Mm-hmm. So built all these kind of approaches. Once it does that, it sends it into a platform we call safe read, which is after the idea of the whole problem with generative AI is it's safe to read. So the safe read platform is staffed by 24/7 by board certified physicians on the Pieces team that review every candidate that looks like hallucination, and it will not proceed to the customer unless it's reviewed by that physician. And we have a really efficient process. This is a separate backend platform that says this was the error, this is the things that they can get through the reviews very quickly. And when they make an edit to the summary saying that this is what happens, that gets back to the AI, and you kind of retrain the AI and it learns from that. And so at this point, we've done 22,000 manual chart reviews, which is its own data set that has improved the AI, and we'll stand by the guarantee. So we think that, and I think just as a fellow physician, you don't want to worry about, so is this company going to be shoulder to shoulder? It should, I think a lot of the companies say, hey, you still need to check it. You need to do all these things, but will you stand up at the sale and say, look, we're going to guarantee this? So one of the things is we actually slow down and make sure that the products are at a point where we can do the guarantee before it can go out. And so that means that you have to have a certain level of annotations but we will maintain that kind of human layer. And we think that's a important differentiator.
Yeah, that's a huge differentiator. I have not come across that. Again, I don't know if it exists. Like you said, maybe someone else does have something like that, but that's great. I mean, it's great you've built that internal process and team to do that.
Awesome. And that's been, and then if obviously, like Adam, let's say you make an edit to the summary or a progress note, that obviously is the best one, right? Because then that's going to come back and learn. So I think both systems kind of learn. The second part is we're working on the harmony of the predictive model with the notes, right? And so we've spent, at this point, about 7 years working on predictive models. And so the question is, how do you introduce that predictive model in a very seamless way with these generated text? And so I think there's an art form to that, and I think we're kind of learning. And then the third part is, so I think the combination of predictive modeling and the generated text is important. And personally, my own view is the predictive modeling from a technical and mathematical standpoint is actually harder. Like these language models are outstanding. We use lots of different ones. We're agnostic. We use many different ones in sequence. There's a lot of ways to do it. They're moving rapidly. But actual predictions, which I think is the essence of what, as a physician, that's what we do. We're saying, what's going to happen to this patient? And what's the best therapy can I predict? That part is harder, I think. And you can see, over the last 10, 15 years, how people, their eyes glaze over with these models. So, but I still think it's very important. So being able to combine all of that, I think, is really important. And then the last part, which I don't know if it's necessarily a differentiator, but I think is the most exciting part of where everything is going, where Pieces is trying to move, is on the concept of agents. So you have this summary, you have these predictions. Can you take the action for me on my behalf, right? And I think people are going to be judged by how thoughtful and how much clinical fidelity does that agent have. And that's what we're really focused on. So we're working right now with Metro Health on if someone has a incidental finding on radiology, under very strict parameters. So Pieces will summarize, it'll find it, summarize it, and then the first step of taking that step of making the order. So Pieces is going to be making the order. An attending physician for the institution will approve it. And then after the order is done for the radiology test, like let's say the follow-up radiology test, Pieces will then track to say, did it happen? And then notify, like make sure we can tell in the summary, hey, they should have gotten this CT scan for this potential adenoma follow-up. And that comes into the ambulatory physician's summary in the pre-visit. And you're now saving a huge amount of time for the ambulatory physician because this started taking place in the background. And so you have to be super careful about these things, extremely highly governed. But I think that could be, I think that could save people time and really allow them to, understand what's happening across their entire patient panel, right? And so
Absolutely.
I'm excited about that. Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, that is, I mean, kudos to the progress that you guys have continued to make. I mean, over the years here, or over this, even just this past year. And, you highlighted several things that are kind of coming in the pipeline. Is there anything beyond the agent that you guys are thinking, like where this could continue to evolve to, or are you just going to keep kind of going where you think the technology and the capabilities go?
The agency part, to me, the agent of taking actions on behalf of the clinician, the nurse, the doctor, nurse, and case manager. To me, Adam, that's a huge universe of activity, and so I think the way to approach it is you have to do the ones that are extremely narrow and very safe first, get really good at it. I think constant human oversight layer, it needs to be done. And then I think that it could start getting more complicated. Start getting even more thoughtful. We're getting a lot of input from the clinical staff. Can you do this or that? We're like, okay, that's going to wait a little bit. But so I think agency there's an enormous amount. Now, one thing is that we are going to, we're having our first customer conference next month, where we're bringing all our customers in. We're excited about it.
Cool.
And we're going to announce our, which I think my team has told me, you got to keep this a secret, but we are going to announce our approach to ambient, which is different than the other approaches. I think any AI company has to start working with all the modalities. So there's an ambient, we do comprehension, there's an ambient, and I think visual is coming.
Yeah.
Visual LLMs, we've been experimenting like flowcharts. But our ambient approach will be slightly different than what people are doing now. And we're excited to see it's going to be more playing on our strengths with comprehension. But I think that will be interesting to see what happens there. But Adam, you should come out. You should come out. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, sounds super exciting. No, that sounds great. I love how you guys are kind of keeping that edge. I think there's I think in this space, there's obviously a lot of competition and just innovation. And as fast as this technology has come, it's like, it's getting better and better too, with every day. And I think we'll just continue to hit these leaps, but being ready and poised to leverage those new capabilities and be able to offer more for the customers is going to be huge. And all of this stuff is so needed in healthcare. I mean, it's really tough right now when I talk to, clinicians that are just, frankly spent. Like it's just, it's tough in the hospital. It's tough in the clinics. But I think all of these technologies are, not only going to cut down that administrative burden, but they're eventually going to, I think, bring back much more of that joy, of practicing. So
I think so. I can't wait to see it happen. And I hope we can get there fast enough, right? Because I do agree with you. I think it's really tough out there for folks. I mean, they feel the concept of kind of moral injury. They're not able to do what they've been asking to do. So yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, I think to summarize all this stuff, if you, when you have an opportunity to kind of pitch pieces to someone influential, that could help make a decision. What's your little elevator pitch, to say, this is what we do. This is why you should consider using us. What would you say to that?
I think what I'd say is, if you're like most health systems and hospitals and we went on the floor, or on the ambulatory clinical environment, we would find kind of your clinical staff are probably over capacity, with the deluge of tasks that they have, digital tasks, non-digital tasks. And so we're totally focused on helping right size that capacity. And there's a lot of tasks that can be taken off from these systems. And so the goal for us is to create these happy employees, which are your clinical staff, your most precious resource, give them time back, have safer care transitions. And these have resulted in outcomes you can measure that are very important. Reduction in length of stay. We've been able to show 18% reduction in length of stay, giving time back 6 to 8 minutes of time per patient per shift, which really adds up. for a doctor and for a nurse. And then with better notes, where they're not having to worry about every single thing that needs to be captured, you're improving revenue generation. So to me, it's the triple benefit, revenue generation, efficiency, and most important, and I think, but this is the doctor me talking, even you put those two aside, having happier clinicians is like a lesson from other industries. Like when you look at other companies where they say, if you have happy employees, you're going to have happy customers, which is our patients, right? And happy customers really, to me, translates to longer lifespan, less medical errors, great delivery of care. So to me, and so Pieces, that's what we're about. And we'd love for you to talk to our customers where they've been able to see these benefits.
Awesome. Love that. And I love that. I say that all the time, that like happy clinicians make happy patients.
Yeah.
And I don't think that gets, because I think, you see that in like, hospitality type industries. I mean, that's obvious, right? Like you treat a customer well in a hotel or on an airline. I mean, they're going to be happy. And I don't know. I feel like there's not always that emphasis in healthcare as much, I think, as it should be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think partly because the executives that can run these systems, sometimes, they may not be there long enough to see, what happens when you can really do this. But sometimes I was talking to a physician that we were speaking to and said that some of my patients, they may be waiting 60 days or maybe 30 days to see me. They've been thinking about this appointment that whole time. For me, it's a 30-minute appointment. I don't have a lot of time. If I can give myself completely to that patient and all the other stuff is taken away and I can just think about that patient in the inpatient or ambulatory setting, that person's life is going to be, it could be, it's not probably hyperbolic to say that it's a significant impact on that person's life. And so, it's incredible that we're on that threshold of getting there.
Yeah. Love it. Totally love it. So I guess the best way to get in touch with the Pieces team, obviously your website, which is piecestech.com, right? Is that the best way for folks to reach out?
100%. They can email me too. Love to hear from people. Ruben.Amarasingham@piecestech.com. And then LinkedIn seems to be, we do a lot on LinkedIn, and you can find us that as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. All right. So let's wrap this thing up. And I always ask these like kind of rapid questions at the end. And I'll be honest, these are a little different than some of the ones I've asked before, but they're still easy. And if you don't have a good answer for it, you can say pass. There's no pressure on this.
Okay. No, now I'm going to answer. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, first one, have you read a recent book that you liked, and why did that one resonate with you?
So a book I'm kind of reading right now that I'm really enjoying is Peter Attia's book on longevity. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a physician, and he's talking about kind of maximizing health span as opposed to lifespan. But what's different is that he really gets deep into the biological science. I mean, he's really getting down all the way down to the molecular and bringing it up to practical strategies. So I've really enjoyed that. It's very thoughtful. And he is, not to give a spoiler, but he has a very personal chapter at the end of the book about his struggles that, so I think for people that listen to this podcast or listen to him, they may not realize it, but I actually read that chapter first because I heard about it, and it really made me read the whole book, so it's a beautiful book.
Great. Yeah. I heard someone recently who read that book and they said the same thing, like, don't just read the first half of the book and think that's like what the book's about. There's a lot more. No, great Suggestion.
Awesome.
Is there one thing that you can't live without?
What I can't live without. Okay, let's think about that. I love to kind of exercise, and I would probably say it's not a thing. It's being able to have movement every day, whether it's riding on a bike, getting out there with the kids, whatever it might be. Exercise, movement is critical to staying mentally mentally sane for me. So
Nope.
exercise, I can't live with that. I would say that.
Love that answer. And most people don't know this, but I was an exercise physiologist before I before I went into medicine. So
that's awesome. Okay, so yeah,
near and dear. So great answer. That was not a plug or a plant in any way. What's the most interesting place you visited?
The most interesting place I would say is Jaffna, Sri Lanka. It's actually I grew up, born and raised here in the United States, but my family's from Sri Lanka. We had to leave early on before I was born because of the civil war there. That's all resolved, and fortunately for the country, resolved. And I was able to go back and visit this last decade, and the northern part of Sri Lanka is gorgeous and it's filled with biodiversity. The beaches are incredible. So not to be a tourism sponsor of the country, but I'd recommend any listener to try to make a trek up to Jaffna, Sri Lanka. Hard to get there, but if you do, it'll be well worth it. Yeah. So
awesome.
Great place.
Sounds extremely enticing. We just got a map, a world map that's on like a canvas for a holiday present, and it's the Karoo family adventures, and there's little pins that we can put in of places we've either been or we want to.
That's amazing. Go look at Jaffna, Sri Lanka. That'd be great.
Yeah. No, I'll take a look. All right, this one's kind of a fun one. If you could have a superpower, what would it be? Oh,
that is a good one. I think if the one for me would probably be like not having to sleep.
Takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, that takes up a lot of time. It's very important. I love sleep, but I can imagine that you could get a lot done. Not beyond that. I think there's a lot of life experience you could have, right? So I think that would be. I'm excited about all the things that haven't been able to do yet, and so that would add another 12 hours.
Yeah,
I don't sleep 12 hours, but it would add a lot of time. Let me say that.
I was gonna say, if you're sleeping 12 hours, that's pretty legit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great question.
I guess I got two more questions. The second to last one, if you weren't in your current profession right now, what do you think you would be doing and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I'm right now so I'm going to take that as, because I'm in the intersection of a couple of different things, but I think the other area that doesn't get, which is also under siege, I think, and is so critical, is education. I think that that there's a enormous amount of like wasted potential around the world of like the future geniuses, Einsteins and Mozarts, that never get to be on the world stage. And I think if we were, so I think I'd probably be focused on education. I think it's like something that would help the entire, like, reaching our full potential, humanity's full potential.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of educators don't get the recognition that they need. Totally
agree. 100%. Yeah. And then the last question, if you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would that be and why?
It's a good one. Okay. I think one of my inspirations early on was in college, I got into reading about a guy named William Osler. He was the kind of what they say is the father of like current modern medicine. He was also kind of founded Johns Hopkins, but he had a really interesting life, like a crazy, wild life. And you wouldn't have thought of him. You see those old pictures of individuals, but he was a crazy guy. He was a prankster. He had these crazy reading habits, and he wrote the original treatise on medicine that started, you can have a textbook on medicine. You can kind of learn from that. So amazing guy, had a wild life and was a kind of father of kind of modern medicine. I think he would be a really interesting dinner conversation.
Awesome. Love that example. Well, Ruben, thank you a ton for taking time out of your, I know, busy day, to join me today to talk about this. I obviously appreciated contacting you in the past, and I'm glad we got to continue this today. And, I just keep up the innovation, keep up the hard work, that I think is really making a difference, in healthcare.
Adam, thank you so much. And thank you for this podcast, this service. I mean, I think the work is really nuanced. The ability to kind of talk to an expert like you and talk through the details is incredibly helpful. And I think a lot of listeners and your podcast following will get a lot out of it. I really appreciate you doing this. You and Dale.
Yeah, no, you bet. I know Dale and I wish we could do these together all the time, but because of our day jobs, it's challenging. And probably the podcast would be about 2 hours long. So no, we'll have, yeah. I think, honestly, our vision, I think, is just to get word out there. I love learning things on podcasts myself, especially even in adjacent fields or totally different, areas. And so I think that's really the big goal, is just to get some voices out there. And then personally, myself, I love having these kind of conversations and, forming these like new relationships with folks that are doing, great things. It helps me kind of think about things that I'm working on. So there's a little bit of a selfish reason, and then there's a little bit of like that altruistic reason.
Well, thank you, Adam. It's really appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you for listening to Efficiency Unlocked, Nerd Tested, MD Approved, a Nerd MD's podcast by Drs. Adam Carew and Dale Gold.